Hello, and welcome back to Post Traumatic Revelations. I am your host, Ofra Caraballo. And in today's episode, we are looking and noticing that while it is still winter, it's not quite as winter as it was just 4 weeks ago. This is the eighth Sunday of winter, and the days are already longer. When we started this season, the sun was setting at about 4:40ish in the evening, but today it's set at 5:35ish. So 8 weeks in, and we've gained almost an hour of sunlight. Have you noticed that the darkest time of winter has already passed? Have you noticed that it's slightly warmer, slightly brighter? Or is it still feeling like cold, dark, and painful for you? Today's episode is an invitation to let winter and all of its expressions become spring. Letting winter become spring is about allowing yourself to feel all of the ways that the cold, the darkness, the pain, the discomfort, the isolation, the transformation, the germination, the closeness, the introspection, the quiet, the solitude, and the preparation. All of the work of winter that is also preparation and anticipation for spring. So much is happening in winter. So much is happening in the darkness. And it includes the smallest, consistent, persistent transformations into spring. And very similarly, the darkness of trauma has within it the seeds and the little flickers and glimmers of love and hope and healing. Winter doesn't need permission to become spring. In nature, there is a natural surrendering that happens. All of nature is allowing. In just 5 weeks, spring will be here. So winter has already started thawing out. And with that thawing, nutrients are moving through the roots toward the trunks of trees. Birds are more active in the mornings. And with every day, the sun is rising a little bit earlier. See, nature knows how to allow growth. It knows how to break apart, how to expand, how to open up and become more, to become the next expanded version of itself. Put any seed in a nutrient soil and it will grow. Sounds pretty easy, right? Easy enough. But think about it. Think about what it means to grow. Take an acorn, for example, because I love the analogy. But take an acorn Bury it in just about any place in the Northern Hemisphere, and it will sit in the darkness, in the deep, dark soil. It will sit, and it will orient itself. Then it softens and surrenders and breaks apart and start to sprout and then move toward the light. It has no fear, no doubt, no judgment. The acorn sits in this knowing. There's no resistance, no guilt, no shame. That acorn has no fear about becoming an oak tree. The acorn has no fear of being stepped on when it's a brand new little sproutling. No fear of being stepped on, no fear of being chopped down, no fear of burning. It just moves towards its next best self. An acorn is on this unquestioned mission to become the biggest, mightiest oak tree that it can be. And it's just about an inch. Think about that. The acorn is about an inch in size, but it does what it needs to do without question to be as big as 9 feet wide, 70 feet high. And like most of nature, in the slow, seemingly death of winter, the acorn or the oak tree just goes within. In the winter, it slows down, rejuvenates, preparing to emerge and burst into spring. Now, we humans have cognition, and while we don't beat our own hearts, we don't pump our own blood, we don't grow our own hair, our own nails, you get the point. The human being doesn't have control over much, but we do have control over our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions. So while we can't control everything, we can control how we think and feel. So we can't control growing bigger, growing older. We can control growing up. And as you know, growing up is not the same as growing older. There are plenty of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, even 50-year-olds who behave like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds when they are stressed out. I have come to learn that you are only as mature as your earliest unhealed trauma. Now, I'm not talking about physical or academic maturity. No, because you can be the biggest, the oldest genius in the room who throws the biggest temper tantrum when someone says no or when things don't go your way. I'm sure you know these kind of people. Geniuses, seemingly adults, grown up, but can't tolerate discomfort or inconvenience. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they handle disappointment. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they handle a no or an inconvenience? Do they shut down? Do they explode? Do they implode? Right? Are they blaming everyone else? Are they sinking and blaming themselves? Or do they run away? Or do they stay engaged and find ways to explore other options and other opportunities? The willingness to be with the traumatized self and do the healing work necessary to grow requires your permission. Yep, good old permission. Because we have cognition, we have the ability to think our way into darkness and despair. We also have the ability to think our way into light and healing. So, the willingness to be with that traumatized part of yourself and to actually do the healing work requires our permission and the courage of an acorn, or the faith of a mustard seed, says Jesus and his disciples. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? It's much smaller than an acorn. And while the acorn has that little cap looking top, neither the acorn nor the mustard seed has a prefrontal cortex, that part of us that makes us human, that gives us the ability to see ahead or remember or to plan, to consider, to give meaning to events, to words, to actions. So the acorn, the mustard seed, they don't have the luxury or the burden of judgment, insight, hindsight, foresight, planning, regretting. They don't have the luxury of pride. They don't have the concerns of rent, mortgage, relocation, graduation, guilt, shame. Winter, spring, summer, fall. All they need to do is just be. Be what they are. I mean, have you ever seen an oak tree? Have you ever seen a mustard tree? They're huge, magnificent in comparison to the little seeds that they are. But from seed to magnificent oak tree to magnificent mustard tree takes surrendering, breaking, stretching, surrendering, breaking, stretching over and over, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, allowing the movements that happen in the deep, dark soil, in the trunks, in the branches, up and through the leaves, over and over, breaking, surrendering, stretching, because that's what living things do. That's what growth is. Can you imagine what your life, your job, your relationships, your friendships, can you imagine what life would look like if you gave yourself permission to winter, to be in the darkness, to allow the breaking apart, the surrendering, and then the growth. Can you imagine if you gave yourself permission to move toward the light, to surrender, to break open, to stretch into your spring, into your magnificence? What if you allowed your cold, dark winter to gently, gradually, slightly be warmer? Just be a little bit lighter, a little bit softer in preparation for that next version of you. Just a little bit warmer, right? A little bit softer, a little bit more compassionate, patient with yourself, allowing the transformation, allowing the healing, allowing the growth. We have about 5 more weeks of winter on the calendar. What can you do at this point where you are? What can you do to start allowing new growth, new healing in your mind, in your heart, in your body, in your life? It is our nature. It is our natural inclination to heal and grow. It's what all living things do. But judgment, guilt, shame can restrict our growth. It can stunt us, keeping us frozen in the darkness, frozen in the pain of our traumas, frozen in the helplessness and hopelessness. But with permission to be where we are, to soften, to orient ourselves toward the light, to slowly, gradually, consistently move toward the light, toward the spring. I'm inviting you to have the courage of an acorn and the faith of a mustard seed as you give yourself permission to let your winter slowly, persistently, gradually become spring. And may you allow yourself permission to gradually move toward your own personal expansion, your own personal magnificence in all ways. I thank you again for your time, your permission, your attention, and I wish you love, hope, and healing. Thank you so much. Be well.